All right, so today what I'm going to be covering is I'm going to be covering warm-ups. Just to give a brief overview of what warm-ups are. All right, warm-ups are done to increase proprioception within the body, so awareness of where the body is. It allows for cardiovascular health, so in a sense, it increases blood flow throughout the body, so increasing oxygen profusion throughout the muscles, as well as allowing for warm blood to be pushed through. At the same time, it allows for the body to prepare for specific types of movements. And so that can be broken down. I mean, I'm not going to go too deep into it, but there can be general warm-ups and specific warm-ups. And again, I'm not going to go too much into it today. What I'm going to be speaking to is just generalized warm-ups. Okay, so the body moves in multiple different planes, right? We can go into a sagittal plane, we can go into a frontal plane, or we can go into a transverse plane. And so with your warm-ups, you want to ensure that you are covering each of those planes. And so one common thing that I've seen with warm-ups is that I've seen a lot of individuals doing static stretching. So for example, a static stretch could be touching your toes, right? So standing here and reaching down and making sure you hold it for an X amount of time. Studies have shown that that actually decreases performance and power output. And by doing that, you are possibly setting yourself up for a little bit more injury during sport. We don't want to do that. We want to ensure that an athlete or the general population can definitely increase their performance cues while doing whatever sport or hobby they're performing in. And so for that reason, we're going to be performing dynamic warm-ups. And dynamic warm-ups could be anywhere from knee hugs to bend and scoop for the hamstrings, or the world's greatest stretch. And to give you a little hint, those are the things we're going to be covering today. But those are the types of techniques that you want to utilize to ensure that the general population, yourself, or your athlete can perform to the highest capabilities. And so just as I spoke to you guys about the first thing I'm going to show you, it's going to be the knee hug, okay? So the knee hug, when setting up warm-ups, right, you want to have at least 5 to 10 yards, meters, whatever measurement you want to create, but some sort of a distance, so that way it can be formed in a traveling motion. And so with the knee hugs, this is going to be more so for the glute, right? It's for the lower back as well. But a great thing, and this is not something a lot of people think of, is that when doing the warm-up, you're also getting the opposing stance leg stability, right? So the ankles are waking up, all your small muscles in your feet are waking up, as well as your glute is activated at the same time. So just to give you an idea of what it looks like, I want you to ensure that your core is going to stay nice and tight, your shoulders are going to stay back. You're first going to bring one leg up to the chest, okay? So you're gonna bring your knee up to the chest. Make sure the opposing stance leg stays straight. Grab underneath the kneecap, keep your shoulders back. I want you to pull up to the ceiling. Now, make sure your toe is pointed up to the ceiling, as well as now with the stance leg, come up on your toe, step forward. The next, repeat the same action, shoulders back, toe up to the ceiling, and pull up to the ceiling as well. Let's get my heart rate up. But that's to give you an idea of what the knee hug looks like. Again, that's for the glute, for the lower back, as well as the stance leg is going to get that same opposing action, getting the stabilizers to activate, as well as, again, stabilization, as well as your glutes to activate at the same time. Now, some common deviations or things that I see, and this is something that I use for a lot of my athletes, or I use for a lot of my clients, is when an individual will start the exercise, I'm going to show you from the posterior view, is that their hip will shift, right? Anytime there's a hip shift, that's telling me there's an imbalance within, of course, the hip, and there's no stability component. So now if I were to make this individual run, I can definitely see that they'll have possibly called it a Trendelenburg sign, right? That's when the hip will shift back and forth. That'll predispose into injury. And so let me turn around and show you what this looks like. So for example, as an individual pull the knee up, they're gonna come up, and their hip is going to shift over. Notice that in that curvature, that's showing that the glute med more so, is actually pulling the hip down, causing a little bit more of a hip rise to the affected leg. Another thing that I do see within the knee hug is, at the same time, is rounding of the shoulders. Okay, so from a side view, as someone were to pull up from here, they're going to pull and they're going to round fully forward. What this is showing me is that A, their glutes aren't strong enough to hold that erector, as well as the erector spine is not holding them up. And it's telling me that their core and their hip flexors are really, really engaged or tight, if you would. And therefore, that's something that needs to be focused and stretched. All right, so the next movement I'm going to show you as part of your general warm-ups is going to be the bend and scoot. That's a term that I coined up. I'm not too sure exactly what it's called, but ideally what it's going to be meant for is for the hamstrings itself. Okay, so I'm going to give you a lateral view of what I'm expecting. And so again, shoulders back, rib cage down to maintain a neutral spine. The first thing is making sure that the foot or the affected leg is going to stay in front, so make sure you have a small stride. Toe is going to point up to the ceiling. From here, you can then have a slight bend in the knee. You know, a lot of individuals believe that a straight knee is purposeful for the hamstring, but if you have a slight bend knee, now you can focus more on this muscle belly of the hamstring itself versus just distal or proximal. Right? So you can have a small bend in the knee, keeping the core tight. The action that you want to perform is think of pushing the hips as far back as possible. This allows for the hamstring to stretch from the proximal end and pulling to the distal end. You're going to reach behind the ankle itself and ideally bring through with the hips and take a few more steps and continue in the traveling motion. Now, again, just like the knee hugs, right? You can tell different deviations, right? And so the deviation that I most commonly see when someone is doing the bend and scoot, again from the posterior side, is a hip shift. Okay, and so I'm going to show you from the back. You'll see a very slight movement of the hip. So from here, as someone will drop down, the hip will shift to the opposing side. So that's telling of the athlete that affected side hip, the glute med, is not locking the hip down. It's not structurally as strong as the opposing side. Not saying that it's not working, right? There's no such thing as a not working but glute or everything in between. But what it's saying is that it's not activating as strongly as the opposing side. Another thing that I do see, again, just like the knee hug, is going to be rounding of the shoulders. Okay, those are very important signs because you want to identify, especially in any population, because a lot of us like to go walking, a lot of us like to go running, right? And any time that does happen, now we're putting ourselves and setting ourselves up for injury. Okay. And finally, the last warm-up that I personally believe should be added to all general types of warm-ups should be the world's greatest stretch. Okay. Why do they call it the world's greatest stretch? Beats me. Beats me. But I can tell you this, is that it's incorporating a lot of different muscles in one stretch. Could possibly be the reason why it's the world's greatest stretch. But ideally, it's going to be focusing on hip flexors. It's going to be focusing on the thoracic spine as far as your rotators, everything in between. So let me kind of show you what I'm expecting from this. So the first initial movement, so from the lateral view, is you're going to step forward into a lunge. Okay. Very commonly, I see a lot of individuals are going to come down into a full lunge stance. This is fine to start. Okay, this is fine to start because what you're trying to do is you're going to keep the glute tight. You're going to reach up above you, and you're going to feel that stretch in that back leg hip flexor. So you're going to pull back. Do not arc the back. That's a very common mistake that I do see. Keep the rib cage down. Allow the hip flexor to stretch fully. From here, you're going to reach down to the instep, and you're going to straighten the back leg. Okay, what this is going to do, you're going to keep the glute nice and tight. Want to keep a nice straight spine in itself. Keep the chin tucked. With the opposing elbow or opposing hand that's not down, you're going to reach your elbow to the inside of that hand. You're going to allow your thoracic spine to stretch. From here, I want you to rotate up, open up your body to the ceiling, allow your head to follow the hand and come all the way through. One common mistake that I do see on top of that stretch is that they don't allow the neck to fully rotate. Right? You want the thoracic spine and the cervical spine to rotate and follow each other. This movement is very imperative and it allows for full rotation of the spine. Whew, I'm out of breath. So those are the three stretches that I generally believe should be a part of any general warm-up. And again, you can go into specific type of movements, and that's for another time, another discussion. But this will set you up to allow the body to increase blood flow throughout the body, allow the joints to accept and be aware of each movement, and allow for improvement of performance. And one thing I do want to put out there is that all of these deviations, all of these different types of movements that I showed you and compensations, there are ways to strengthen those muscles, but do remember that it's not just muscles. It could just be how the body was moving. And there are different ways to actually change it. It could be by cueing. So specific types of cues as squeeze your left glute, right? Or turn your neck, or bring your shoulders back. Anything that can correspond with the athlete or the client themselves, right? There's all these types of feedbacks from verbal, so audio, by physical, or if not, again, as I stated, it would have to go into teaching them how to move and strengthening up those muscles. I hope all of this kind of gave you a good idea of what a general warm-up should be and what I believe should be ideal moving forward. If there's any questions, please feel free to leave it down below, and thank you very much.